I'm John Jacobs. I'm the host of this series, Catalyst for Change, organized again by the Northern Virginia Economic Development Alliance, which is an umbrella organization of the various offices of economic development across Northern Virginia. I'll do as I do with each of these episodes. I'll take us through some quick updates and stats that are relevant to this discussion or each discussion. This discussion has a rather broad impact. And so if you just bear with me, I'll take you through, it's one slide, and then I'll go in further depth and introduce our panelists as well. So let me just go ahead, if I may, and do that. Catalyst for Change, how companies turn disruption into success. This, again, is the third of the series of 10. This particular episode is entitled Detecting COVID-19, Protecting People at Work, Senseware Sounds the Alarm. And here are those quick stats. So if you bear with me, as we all know, the US government signed a $900 billion bill into law as a new round of COVID relief at the end of December. As of mid-December, there are 2 FDA-approved vaccines to fight COVID, one by Pfizer, BioNTech, and the other by Moderna. The total vaccines distributed across the US as of yesterday is 17.2 million doses, keeping in mind that with both of these vaccines, 2 doses are required. Total US infected by COVID as of this morning, according to Johns Hopkins, 21.3 million in the United States. Total US deaths as of this morning, again, Hopkins, 361,312. Total doses administered as of yesterday is 5.3 million. The maximum current US herd immunity rate, and we'll talk about that essentially is the level of infection or vaccination that must be achieved to stop or greatly curtail the spread of this disease, is currently at 2.15%. The necessary population, according to the CDC, that needs to acquire an immunity, either by being infected or vaccinated, is between 80 or 90%. And that shows that we have to achieve about 265 million Americans in order to achieve that herd immunity. I'll just transition here to specifically about workspaces now. Here's some quick numbers for you to consider. Trend of US workers working remotely. This is from Gallup, one poll they had in April, another in October. In April of 2020, we had at the first peak of this pandemic, 51% of workers were working remotely. That is full-time working remotely. By October, it was down to 33% full-time working remotely. And then these subsets are 25% sometimes working remotely and 42% never working remotely. This, I assume retail, certainly first responders and the healthcare industry and others as well. US commercial vacancy rates, decreased, not increased, that's not right. The vacancy rates increased, so the occupancy rates decreased. The vacancy rates did increase quarter over quarter, that is 3Q20 over the second quarter from 11.9 to 12.6 in vacancy. You'll hear from this conversation a lot of discussion about flexible working spaces, hoteling, hybrid solutions to working remotely or in the office, et cetera. Great panel here. I'm very excited about this panel. Victor Hoskins, President and CEO of Fairfax County Economic Development Authority in Fairfax, Virginia. Serene Almaman, CEO, co-founder of Senseware in Virginia as well. And Ilan Zakar, SVP, Senior Vice President and Chief Technology Officer with Carr Properties, here in the DC, Virginia, Maryland region, well known to, I'm sure, most of us. We have the actual people here, and so I'm going to exit my wonderful screen here. Excuse me, I have to stop sharing, and my eyes fail me as I do this. Just give me one sec. Let's see here. I think we're back. Have we stopped sharing? We see each other, yes? Awesome, I achieved something, great. Let me just go through quick introductions. I'll start with Victor Hoskins. Victor Hoskins, as I mentioned, President and CEO of Fairfax County Economic Development Authority. Victor joined Fairfax County EDA as president and CEO in August of 2019. Previously, he was the director of Arlington Economic Development. In that role, he is most known for leading his team to successfully attract the Amazon HQ2 headquarters to Arlington County. This is a deal, fascinating numbers, a deal that will bring between 25,000 and 38,000 jobs to Arlington, while creating simultaneously, from a regional perspective, an additional 75,000 jobs. Other successes attributable to Victor's work and that of his team was to attract Nestle, Grant Thornton, MasterCard, Deloitte, and PBS to Arlington. Prior to his work with Arlington, Victor was deputy mayor of economic development for the District of Columbia, where he led his team to realize the projects of the Wharf and the city center over in DC. Victor holds a master's degree in city planning from MIT and undergrad a bachelor's degree from Dartmouth College. Serene Almerman is CEO and co-founder of Senseware. As such, as a CEO of and this is great in her bio when I read this, of a blossoming technology company. She inspires all her workers and helps attract the industries into the Internet of Things, into the technology space. Specifically, Serene identified the build community, that is where car properties and others come into play here, as an industry, as a sector that was not getting enough attention from the Internet of Things space. That is, and we're going to what the Internet of Things, IoT, is in a moment. But a big part of this conversation that we'll be discussing, Serene holds a PhD in IT, information technology, as well as having 11 patents to her name for her work with Senseware, and has been named one of Forbes' 50 list of women-led startups. So welcome, Serene. Alonzo Carr is responsible, he's SVP and CTO of Car Properties, responsible for directing all corporate technology, strategy, and standards for Car. Alon has consistently selected, architected, and implemented solutions for Car Properties that has transformed the company's operations while keeping on the cutting edge of technology. Prior to joining Car Properties, Alon served as Chief Global Information Officer for Gazette Group, where he helped grow 23 shopping centers in the southeast of the United States to over 640 spanning 4 continents. So he'll have a great international perspective to add to the conversation. Victor, I'm going to start with you, if I may. I sort of started this discussion with a kind of a downer, talking about COVID numbers and the severity of it, and which of course is no laughing matter. And now we have the arrival of 2 and hopefully more vaccines. You've been through a number of crises and that you've flourished from. It is macroeconomic crises mostly, whether it's the financial crisis or the .com bubble when you're in California. What are your observations? Like, what should our attitude be about this right now?
Well, I think our attitude should be, it's just a matter of time before we get through this. I mean, our nation, and let's talk on the macro level. The .bomb, affected us all. And I don't know a person that wasn't affected by it, either through their stock portfolio or through their direct job. And I will tell you this, I told all my friends, you don't lose money until you sell. So stay invested. And look, that was a very difficult time for our country. And then 9/11. I mean, I remember 9/11. My friends told me, I'm in real estate development. They told me never, ever again will there be a tall building built in the United States. Well, more tall buildings were built after 9/11 than ever before in the history of man on planet Earth. So guess what? That didn't happen. They also told me they'd never fly on a plane again. People aren't going to fly anymore. Well, guess what? There were more people flying. There were more miles flown before the pandemic than since in history. So, I think that when we're in these things, even the financial crisis, who's going to get a mortgage again? I mean, it's so, when you're in the moment, it feels like it's insurmountable. But what I do know about our country is that we do come out of these things, and we come out of them in a pretty robust fashion. I mean, let's just harken back to the pandemic of 1918, the Spanish flu, where over 600,000 in the United States died. I'm sure that people were feeling like, how are we ever going to get this economy back in order? Well, we had the roaring 20s after that. So the key is that this is the resilience of the United States. And we are a very, very strong and resilient people. We are used to challenges. We look for challenges. We have great innovators like Serene. We have incredible global minds like Elon. We have people like you who are tenacious. This is what our country's made of. So when we face something like this, I just say it's a matter of time. And I've already told my team, July 1, you better be ready to go. You got some business to chase, it better be lined up July 1. Because trust me, this new president that's coming in is very clear. He wants 100 million people vaccinated by within 100 days of him being inaugurated. I got to tell you, him being sworn in, that to me is what I need to hear, because that opens the gates for business.
Well, yeah, and I think you make great points, and it's great to have that historical perspective, because one could get really lost in the forest here. So that said, things will be different, certainly in the physical world, because of what we're going through now, and perhaps that that prepares us for something down the road. Who knows when that might occur? What do you think those things are? Just from a business perspective, what do you think will be different as we emerge from this, Victor?
Well, what I'm hearing from clients right now, what I'm hearing from the business clients that we're dealing with, and actually, Alon and I were talking about this before the call, before this discussion. There's a different behavior between companies that are 50,000 square feet and above, and companies that are leasing 50,000 square feet or below. And the difference in behavior is that the ones 50,000 and above seem to be moving ahead, making their commitments. I mean, everyone heard about the Microsoft Innovation Center. They signed in Reston for over 400,000 square feet. And then a couple of months later, they signed for another 45,000 square feet in the same location. And then earlier this week, 150,000 square feet in Arlington. This is Microsoft. This is one company. That's the kind of thing that has happened. Volkswagen North America re-signed in this region for almost 200,000 square feet. And we, in the middle of all of this, the big companies seem to be moving ahead. The smaller ones seem to be trying to figure out how they can save or reduce costs with this new model of work from home. And I think what we can expect is that there will be more people teleworking than before, and there will be more people doing what I call hybrid working than before, where they're spending 3 days in the office and maybe 2 days out of the office, or 2 days in the office and 3 days out of the office, but very, very flexible. And also even the schedules of people coming in. We've already discussed this with my small team. There are only about 45 of us in the office, but we talked about people coming in at 8, 9, and 10, and then leaving at 4, 5, and 6. And people are loving that idea. So I think you're going to see more flexibility, and I think that's going to lighten the traffic on our roads. And I think ultimately in the office market itself, I think is going to balance out, because you have countervailing forces. You had this force that was pushing us down to save money to as low as 100 square feet per person, 80 square feet per person, 75 square feet per person. Now people are talking 200, 210 to accommodate social distancing and to create a more healthy environment for employees.
And just to segue, Serene, that healthy environment, you and Alon's company have teamed together, as you have with other companies. Tell us a bit about Senseware, what you do, and what you're doing with your IoT platform. And in the process, please define what IoT is. That makes it relevant for getting back to work safely.
Yeah, sure. So at Senseware, we built a technology platform, an Internet of Things technology platform. That basically means that we provide a way to connect the physical environment to the web, so we can provide people a sense of security, that they're aware of what's happening in their physical environment from anywhere at any time. And specifically, we, as we build solutions for real-time visibility, we look at what the market needs. And so we applied the same thought process with specifically after COVID hit, by looking at, okay, how is this changing the environment, and what type of real-time visibility that would benefit everyone to help cope with this new circumstances. And just given the fact that airborne transmission specifically of viruses and COVID specifically, is the primary mode and the most concerning mode of transmission. We focus on getting visibility around airborne health and safety. And so we applied our Internet of Things platform to capture data to evaluate the efficacy of ventilation systems. So we have indoor air quality type sensors, CO2 sensors, particulate matter sensors, temperature and humidity, CO, and sensors like that. Included airflow sensors to get data around how air is flowing in a space, and then also data around how HVAC systems are operating. And together, you get a clear idea and a real-time idea of how your ventilation system is working and how well it's working in reducing the risk of transmission in indoor spaces, given the fact that airborne is our primary concern now. And then we also added specific sensors, advanced sensors that are able to detect or identify specific viruses like COVID-19. So we added to the mix the option to include a pathogen sensor that could get a sample of air and can tell you if there's COVID in the air as an additional layer for this particular threat that we are facing in indoor spaces. And so that solution has been getting a lot of traction. It's been used in the context of creating trust and building confidence, because when both the virus and the measures that are being taken are invisible, how do you really know that it's safe for you to go to these different indoor spaces? So using real-time data and alerting of the indoor conditions and air quality condition is a critical element, and we've seen a lot of interest in that to create that confidence in these spaces.
Great. And Alon, so here's Serene, CEO of a software company. It's a platform company, cloud-based IoT. So that lives over here. And then there's a physical world, a physical environment. You have to pull the two of those together. And it can't just be Senseware and an HVAC company. I mean, can you talk a bit about that? Because that's quite the orchestration.
Yeah, especially when you address older buildings, because the newer buildings are very easy to address, what Serene was talking about and what Victor is talking about with regards to, people coming into the new spaces, and then the new construction that is coming up, which usually carries leases that have been signed for a while ago. When we talk about the older buildings and the integration of new technology into these buildings and being able to provide the comfort to the customer that is coming in, it is critical and it is very important. And back to what Victor was saying before, how things are going to change. These are how things are going to change. But also adding to that would be the knowledge and the requirements of our new customers that are going to come in for wellness. They're being trained right now. During this COVID time, people have been trained about air quality. They've been trained about about air circulation. They've been trained about what to look for when you come into a space to feel comfortable and safe when it comes to your health. Using Senseware within our portfolio makes it very easy to bring that knowledge out. And then you have to wrap it around with notification. You have to wrap it around with actions that come around it. And one of the things that are sometimes difficult is because you're addressing multiple types of spaces. A lobby is a very high ceiling, so you're not going to really sense anything over there. It's not really important, but then it's very important to understand what's the density of the people and how close are people over there. Then you walk into areas that are a little bit enclosed where people gather. Then you want to maybe understand density, but as well as you want to start looking at your air quality. And then how does that interface afterwards together with your air handlers, with your chillers, with your filtration of the air? How fast do you circulate the air? All of those things eventually have to come together. And by applying these new technologies and the stuff that we're getting and we're working with Senseware, it allows us to almost build a playlist for the building to understand the different time of the day, what's the condition outside, what's the condition inside, how many people are in the building, and then we can actually address, maybe automate the building in order to adjust to the situation.
And it's interesting, just for the audience, there's a wonderful brief video on the Car Property website. It's about 3 minutes. I encourage you to go take a look at it, because it just shows you a bit of what Lon's been up to in developing on the technology front. And, I had no idea, not only were these doable, that they're being implemented now.
Mm-hmm.
That brings up just one quick issue. It came up in our prep, but I just want to sort of address it. Individual privacy, where I think Alana, was you, or maybe Serene was you, made the point, or heck, it been Victor, I can't remember. But counting the people in a space is not the same thing as tracking an individual in that space.
Correct. That's correct. And we do have, even when we're looking at, we're now working with our security provider, with our access control provider. And what we're trying to do is, how do we understand how many people are in an enclosed space and not allow more people to come in? A gym would be a great example for that. We've learned through our sensors that people even come during the weekend to use our gyms, because they either prefer to use our gyms than going to a gym, public gym. But how do you know that there's enough people, that there's not too many people in that room? So we're counting the people coming in and out, but again, you're not allowed to, we don't capture faces, we don't capture any information, because the privacy component, all we're doing is we're counting people in and out. Even on the temperature side of it, when you have these temperature cameras of people coming in, it is very, what we're doing, and we actually back it up with our statement of operation and some legal documents behind it, that we do not capture your face. We don't really care about who is coming in front of us. We're just measuring the temperature that is coming from the forehead.
It's interesting, Victor. I wanted to touch back on, I mentioned at the top in that summary about funds available, and perhaps some of these funds are available. We're referring to the COVID relief package that was passed at the end of December, the $900 billion. It's distributed differently than the earlier packages. Is it correct? So that you have funds that are.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's interesting. The new package that's out right now, it really, there's about 300 billion under the Paycheck Protection Program that are forgivable loans. So that's very similar to before. They've added about $300 to supplement unemployment. And then there's about 13 billion in food assistance. I mean, there's a lot of different elements to this, including 35 million for healthcare providers, 16 million for testing and tracing. So 16 billion, I'm saying B with a B, not an M. But all of these are being going. For example, the PPP program is still going through the Small Business Administration, working directly with banks. So you still have to have a relationship with the bank. We will be providing workshops and seminars to help people apply for this the same way that we did before. Also, in terms of the other elements of the program that relate directly to business, we feel very comfortable working those elements. The other elements actually go to other departments in the county.
And can some of those funds, ostensibly, some of those funds could be used for physical improvement of a workspace for health reasons?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. The money is broken up into different parts, and there's a minimum threshold in order to get the funds what we call forgiven as a grant, and that minimum threshold basically is kind of a guidance that allows the government to make sure that you're using it specifically for payroll. So I think that number, I don't want to say what that number is.
I think it's 60%.
Yeah, 60%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that constraint really guides again, specifically the payroll side. But after that, it's pretty flexible what you can use the money for. And as you would think, it makes sense in order to protect your employees, in order to protect your consumers, to pay for improvements that actually do provide that protection.
I think one of the facilities within this as well is, and I think you mentioned it, is a dedication toward, is it K through 12
Yeah.
schools?
Yeah. Cool.
And Serene, tell us about that, because we have car properties, lovely properties. I love those buildings. One's right, not far away from the place in Bethesda. And yet schools, getting back to school is a critical path to getting back to work. Is your technology, Serene, deployed in schools as well? And how do they deal with this?
Yeah, schools have been super active in trying to find ways to resume in-person education. And I think what we're seeing is that they really understand that they have to optimize the environment now to permit that in-person education, because just remote learning is non-optimal in so many ways. I can tell you from personal experience with my kids. And so we've seen, I think schools through, wherever we're deployed are the most active right now in changing and deploying technology to really improve the conditions and figure out ways to keep the kids and teachers healthy and safe. And it's really encouraging to see that they've increased the allocation of funds to help with that in the new stimulus package. K-12 is a little bit over $50 billion allocated compared to $13 billion before in the first round. We've seen a lot of the first round funds used for disinfectants and remote education, technology and things like that. This new allocation talks about improving ventilation and the infrastructure. So we're expect to see a lot more investment in that area, which is really great, because we really need to make sure. I always say keeping our teachers and kids safe means monitoring the air they breathe in this environment. So that's great to see, and we're deploying a lot of schools where in all of DC public schools, for example, they have our monitoring solution there to help facilitate the reopening plans.
I want to interject. So I just wanted to ask a question. I mean, to both of you, do you see this as a really a new standard that is being developed? Something that we're like, even from the city side of it, like I know that you're more from the economic side of it, but when you're looking at the development side of it, do you see new standards emerging on requirements within spaces, within new buildings, new constructions, new improvements that will require certain standards of air quality, air purification, and different standards of occupancy, that limitations that you had from before? And again, you would see that probably from the technology side of it, that you would provide it similar to what, like in Florida, that after Hurricane Andrew, everyone had to have hurricane shutters, or new construction had to have protection from hurricanes. Do you see that coming in there too?
Yeah, I see this very similar to, remember LEED certification?
Yeah.
How it came in slowly and it was introduced, and then all of a sudden, and you with car properties probably realize, you know this better than most of us, it became a competitive advantage to have a LEED gold building or a LEED platinum building, and you priced actually to that. I think that something similar is going to happen with office buildings, and I'm sure educational spaces too, in that being able to monitor it, like Serene's company is able to do, to create these IoT situations where you can actually consistently monitor these things. Those things become important because they preserve health. And hey, just for flu season, I mean, forget this pandemic, just think of a flu season. Imagine you marketing a building, and I can see this, people marketing a building, our building's healthy. That building is not, and there are a lot of Class B buildings that are sick buildings. We all know that. So, or Class B minus or C plus. So I think that in the long run, it's going to become part of the way that buildings are designed and regulated, because it just makes sense, because the economic cost is so high for not doing it. I mean, us not having these things in place have cost this economy trillions of dollars. So I think that's the reason why it will happen. And we're right now in a situation where we don't even want to re-enter the spaces unless some of these things are done. And I know Serene could probably give more detail on that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I totally agree. I feel like what we've learned from this this pandemic is that we have to find ways to coexist with situations like this without creating major disruption, and knowing that you are taking care of where you spend 90% of your time, all your indoor spaces, to be healthy and know that they are healthy and they're kept healthy around the clock, is how we can continue to coexist and reduce disruptions in the future. And yeah, so I totally see that this is going to be, monitoring air quality is going to be a non-negotiable in all indoor spaces at some point.
In this topic, prior to this role, I was with the Council on Tall Buildings in Chicago, and the idea, and Serene, you mentioned the word yesterday, clicked my memory, was healthy buildings, and that this topic, and you made this point, Serene, that this has been, that the current COVID experience is a subset of a much larger issue that has a longer tail to it, whether it's architecting backwards or building forward. That becomes this, hence Alon's question, much more of a critical item that I don't know which organization would do the standardization on that, but probably somebody at ANSI, I imagine, or AIA or somebody like that, or all of them. Alon, here's a question. It came up when we were prepping. Just, the whole modern office space movement has been moving toward open offices and bench seating and common areas. And then this thing, COVID, hits. What does that mean? Does that mean we're going to go backwards in reverse and go back into offices, or what do you think?
I think that, well, luckily for us, the generations that are now prominent within our buildings or that are out there today within the workspace, they like community. They like to talk to each other. They like to be together. So I don't think that we're going to achieve anything by locking them in offices. But what we are going to have to do is we're going to have to provide them with some level of assurance that the space that they're working in is healthy and good for them. And I think that, like I said before, is that people are going to are more educated now. So we're looking at air quality, you're looking at temperature, you're looking at humidity, you're looking at CO levels, CO2 levels, you're looking at even light temperature, right? So it's not only the intensity of the light, but what temperature is the light in? Is it going to help me sleep better at night, or it's going to help me be happier? I mean, there's a lot of things that play within the health and the environmental. The acoustics also is a very important component. And I think that being able, so companies today may have done that in the past, or maybe are doing it now or getting into it, but it's also how do you present it out, right? So you have can you actually present a report card and feel comfortable to show it to your customer when they walk in through the building, to understand the air quality within the building, if it's in a space itself, in a common area, where they can come in, scan their phone at the entrance of the door and understand that the space that they're walking into is in good standards, has been clean, has been purified, has good air quality. We can provide all of that. And then marrying it with what Victor said, that we're going to space people a little bit more now instead of cramming them one on top of another, then you'll be able to still achieve this community, but in a healthier environment.
Yeah, we talk about winning, science and technology. A lot of this episode is about bringing science, vaccines, and technology together, IoT, advanced filtration, movement of space. There's people moving through space. Is that really the win here? Is that what's going to get people back into offices and schools? Is it the science and the technology piece, or is it larger than that?
No, it's actually not. I mean, I know Victor has a great answer for this, but we've been putting out surveys. We've been investing in technology and different solutions. But again, we're looking at it. When we looked at COVID, we looked at the 3 different components, right? We looked at, stage 1, working from home, shutting down our buildings, still keeping our buildings healthy. You have to keep your water running because of Legionella, and you have a whole bunch of things that you have to maintain within the building when the building is unoccupied. Then how do we actually bring you in to start working in the building, which was phase 2, to make you come into the building and understand that we're trying to provide you a comfortable environment to come back into. stage 3 is where we're in right now, is where I need to make you feel comfortable living and being inside of our building itself. And these are the different types of technologies that we're rolling out. And where the third one, it doesn't only concern COVID, actually looks past COVID. But one of the things that we're seeing is that no matter how much we're doing and we're putting into the building, the people are not coming back. And I think that it's a much bigger picture than just the technology that we can and the solutions that we're applying within the building itself. I think that it goes back to a lot of other pieces, and I think that Victor has a good answer for what will bring the people back.
Victor?
Yeah, we work with the entire office market, obviously in Fairfax County, which is about 120 million square feet. So, and we have people talking to existing tenants all the time about, conditions and whether or not they're going back to the office or in the office. And what we're kind of the feedback that we're getting is that the vaccination level really makes the difference. And we're, I can see, just personally, I can see once 100 million people are vaccinated, and I'm one of them, I would feel a lot safer going to the office. As a matter of fact, I would be very confident going to the office. The reason why is that 100 million people is probably a mix of people who don't work in the office and people who do work in the office. And if I'm vaccinated and they're not, they're protected because I probably am not carrying. And then if they take the precautions of wearing masks, social distancing, until we have this vaccination level that you talked about, herd immunity at 80%, that will make you feel so much more comfortable. And again, 100 million vaccinations with 25 million or 20 plus million haven't already been affected. That's 120 million people. That's a third of the population of the United States. And many of those will be adults. And that's where I work. That's who I work with. I think it's a different issue for schools, but for the offices, I think once you hit that level, I think people will have a much greater comfort level going in and out of the office. And I think worst case scenario, end of June, early July, we are way past that number, and people are actually getting on planes again. Our business, we do a lot of flying, and we don't, right at this point, we have few people in the office. Some people go to the office, but we don't have outside meetings in the office. No one from the outside comes in the office. That changes the number of people that occupy the office. That changes, so all of this, it's a very dynamic process, but I think there's a level that you have to hit, and that's why I love what President Biden has put out as an objective, as a goal to hit 100 million vaccinations 100 days after he's inaugurated. That I love, because see, I can work with a goal. I can't work with this vague, ambiguous, and we're behind scenario. That does not give my office users confidence. That doesn't give me confidence in what's going to happen next. So I think the surety is extremely important. And part of that's cultural and part of that's medical. So I think it's a combination of the two.
So the burning question in my mind is a tactical one for a second. I think you're absolutely right, clearly. But thank goodness we've got these 2 vaccines rolling out, and just the speed of that is obviously the blocking issue. But so speaking of speed, I'm going to ask a client hardware engineering guy and a software leader the same question, which is, how fast does your joint solution take to roll out in a structure, whether it's a school or a building? How quickly can it be implemented? Serene, I'll pick on.
Yeah, I can start. It's pretty quick. Especially our technology it was wireless based, so it's easily retrofittable for our end. They require specific sensor units. They are just plug them on the wall outlet and move to the next point. So it's minutes. Yeah, so it's pretty quick and easy, and we have been doing a lot of big projects that require 70 sensors in one location that took a couple of hours. So the technology is available. It's easy to install and get up and running and see value immediately.
I will confirm with that. That it does take literally no time to do the installation and implementation and access to your data. The question here, and I think that this is the bigger thing, is what do you do with the data?
Yeah.
Right. So how do you access your data? How do you group your data? and then knowing that the air quality is good or bad, what are you going to do if the air quality is bad? What are your procedures? So I think that getting the system up and running is very easy, and it's very good because sometimes these technologies are very difficult to implement. Right now, all I need is power. The minute I get power, everything else is being done for me. The problem then that comes together is that how do you bring the different types of solutions, big spaces, smaller spaces? How do you, because you want a holistic view. You also want to understand what happens when something goes bad. Who do you trigger? Who do you call? So notification and actions on top of that data becomes also very critical and important. So if I package it all together and I say, okay, how long would it take me to roll out a technology piece with a reaction, notification, and optimization, I would say a 2 to 3 month process to get a good grasp on what is happening within a space.
Yeah, it's interesting. And when we were prepped for this, you made this, you were talking about an in-office gym, I believe, and access control, because your whole point about, what would you call it, a punch list or activity list?
Yep. You would have to have a...
Give us a
playlist. He said playlist.
Playlist, that was it.
A playlist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you want to have a playlist. So, you know, for those of you, I don't want to introduce a lot of technical terms, but a digital twin, for example, which is a replica of a physical building. It's a term that came from space, where they sent astronauts to space, and they needed to address issues and problems for the astronauts on the ground. But they had these sensors that were in space that were feeding live data. So you would collect the data from the sensors, feed them to the sensors, to feed them to the simulation that is down on the ground on Earth, and then the simulator, the computer, would be able to sort of like run different scenarios. So now digital twin is becoming very common within the building and within the real estate market. So now you take all these sensors, you put them in a 3D space, and then what you can do is you can run your simulations, you run your different scenarios. I know how many people come in on a Thursday on a very hot day during this time of the year. And because of that, this is how I need to adjust the air quality. This is, you know, how the sun moves. So, you know, and then hits on my window. So I need to low or raise the intensity of my light. All of these kind of things, you can capture them over time. And then you make that actionable, where you create a playlist for your building that when these things happen, this is what I want this is what I want to change and modify within the building.
Yeah, it's fascinating, this blend of the heart of the physical and the IoT piece, the cloud-based solutions. To tell the audience, we are taking questions. If you have a few questions, feel free to throw them in there. We're going to kind of wrap up toward the end of the hour here. But I wanted to sort of as a closing item, you know, if we look at you know, President-elect Biden's 100-day vision to 100 million, Victor, as you mentioned it, and we take my sour news at the top of this episode about the numbers and where we are. It seems, you know, 2.5% penetration of immune, shall we say, to get to 80%. That's quite a lift. And you know, how do we partner the work that you're doing with communicating that work to the business community and the public, so that folks are starting to open those doors and walk back in? And I think building awareness around your technology solutions, because that's the QED piece of that, you know, partly for me, is the proof point is, yes, Victor, I agree with you. Hitting those threshold numbers, you know, 100 million in 100 days. But I would also want to know exactly what is taking place in that building where I'm about to enter. And what ideas are there to communicate that more globally? And I mean, Victor, I'm going to throw that to you, because you're sitting on, what'd you say, 100 million square feet in your county?
Yeah, 120 million square feet. And, you know, whatever we would do it in conjunction with the health department, because they have some, they have some regulatory requirements that I believe that are going to come out of this. And those regulatory requirements will affect, you know, probably most or all buildings. Right now, you know, we're at level 3. There's a limitation on gathering. You know, all of those things come from health-related potential outcomes. So health is going to drive whatever we inform the users of. And since we work closely with property owners like Car Properties and others, and developers and brokers, we would be working directly with them to communicate this information. Some of this we would do directly, through email blasts. Some of it we may do through news articles, and some of it we do through workshops like this. I got to tell you, when we did the prep for this, things that Elon and Serene were talking about blew my mind. I mean, I love that whole thing of, yeah, when the number reaches the max for the gym, no one else can come in. Anybody can go out, but no one can come in. What a simple solution. It's just counting. It's not even complicated. It's not taking a facial image or a retina scan. And I think that when they're non-invasive solutions like that, they're going to be not only more attractive, but also more easily implementable. Because I think like that counting thing is easily implementable. I think it gets more sophisticated when you talk about the air handling systems. You talk about air handling systems that may destroy viruses that are airborne, may take the air in and increase the volume of air that's taken through, bringing in more fresh, filtering out, through UV or whatever, the air that's going into the building. I think that these are the things that become more complicated, and actually from a regulatory standpoint, we need to give people time to implement those. But the ones that protect life and limb in the early stages, I think the health department will let us know which ones that companies will have to do, and we will communicate that like we always do.
Great. There's a couple of questions coming on. I'm just going to read these to the audience. One is, where do you, it's addressing Serene, but I think everybody can feel free to jump in. Where do you see your technology being used to help restaurants reopen in a healthy way, for indoor dining? Or do you? You're on mute, Serene, just to let you know.
I can start. So in a couple of ways. One is, I know a lot of restaurants are deploying some measures to improve air quality, to increase confidence in coming back to and opening dining areas. Communicating that these measures are effective is a way to help with that. So saying to the customers that we are just saying we're monitoring air quality, and these aspects of what we did from improving filtration, we're monitoring the particles to know that the filtrations are working. We have CO2 sensors to know if the occupancy is too much or if the ventilation is not working properly to remove the virus effectively from the air. And we're monitoring these conditions for you so you can come in and be healthy. So building that confidence and communicating that the measures that are being deployed are being monitored in real time and are optimized in real time if issues occur. And the second is to help, with that data that's going to be available to the operators, the hosts and whatnot, to create procedures around how they can manage the space. So one of the concepts and the terms we coined is temporal distancing. We talk about social distancing, people being apart, but temporal distancing is where you close an area for a time until the HVAC system is able to reset the air to make it at a healthy level. So when you're looking at the data, you can say that, we just had a group in this area, the CO2 is just still at a high level. Let's not put anyone in that, those tables or these areas over here until we see the CO2 levels good, the particle levels are removed or reduced from the area, and then we can bring. So things that procedure like that, they can use the data to educate and help make the right decisions. Are ways we have been talking to restaurants to use technology like this for.
Similar to what Serene is doing, we're doing in conference rooms. So we have a room booking system that actually looks at the air quality within the room itself. And what we did is we actually limited the slots. So before, it's not like every hour that you can book your room. If you're booking a room for half a day. And what we're doing is that the quality of the air, the cleaners have to come in and clean the room itself. And we have also a device called Clorox 360, which also does all this very intense cleaning and cleans out all pathogens within the room itself. But the point is that the room scheduling system is interfaced with access control, which is also interfaced with the sensors, which can actually sense to see if the room is actually clean. So you went to your meeting, you did your meeting, you walked out. If the room wasn't cleaned, the sensors will detect that special chemicals within the air are not there, which are the cleaning chemicals. And because they're not in the air, the door stays locked. And then once everything is okay and your schedule comes, the door will open up. So it's the integration of the technology with the physical actions within the space itself that will allow all this to happen.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to see that all come together. And, you know, maybe 5 or 7 years ago, this solution would not have been around. We wouldn't have had the platforms, nor the filtration, nor the detection equipment, the sensors rather. We put it all together. And so scenarios like this are just in time. So it's great to see that. We're running out of time, folks. So I'm going to thank the panel. Before we go, I just want to point out the next webinar we're having. It's part of this series. And let me just do that here from my screen here. Sorry. It actually went away. Well, the answer is 3 Thursdays from now. So 3 Thursdays from now, we'll be hosting a company based in Loudoun County, Virginia. And I'll communicate this through the distro that we have, that we send out, that alerts everybody about the topics. I want to thank the panel. I want to thank the audience for taking your time out of the day. This has been very informative. Folks, you can find this webinar video and the attaching slides on the novaeda.org website. It'll be up later on today. So please feel free to go there. You go into the events tab and then down you go into the webinars. Thank you, panelists. Thanks, audience, very much. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.